Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and Chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition, and we turn now to poem 510. It was not death, for I stood up. Emily's use of the word not is profound. Some scholars have pointed out that other than a few filler words, the word not is maybe the most powerful word that she resorts to, using it many, many times. In many ways in this poem, we're back to the existential crisis, the emotional crisis of 1862. Whatever caused that, we've commented on the number of reasons why we're not sure what that is. We're back to poem 341. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore in yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round of ground or air or aught. A wooden way, regardless grown, a quartz contentment like a stone. This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow. First chill, then stupor, then the letting go. This is that notion of the feet mechanical go round. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 509 poems. We just finished with 509, if anybody, friend be dead. Now, the sense of contradictions in this poem, these paradoxes, are remarkable. We'll ask, is this a poem about mental or religious despair? Maybe both. Notice the it in this poem is not death, it's not night, it's not frost, it's not fire, but rather chaos, which in some ways is, she'll call it stopless. You can't do anything about it. One scholar has pointed out this is Emily's most famous example of a repeated indefinite it. Some have commented on the biblical sparseness, one scholar called it, a kind of almost like biblical riddle that the it maybe of this poem is in fact the resurrection of the dead into heaven. What one scholar has called the nightmare vision of the resurrection. As we read this, as we've done to all of these poems, I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what is the it. And of course the translinguistic nature of anguish. Chaos, as she'll call it. It was not death, for I stood up and all the dead lie down. It was not night, for all the bells put out their tongues for noon. It was not frost, for on my flesh I felt Sirocco's crawl, nor fire, for just my marble feet could keep a chancel cool. And yet, it tasted like them all. The figures I've seen, set orderly for burial, reminded me of mine, as if my life were shaven and fitted to a frame and could not breathe without a key, and 'twas like midnight some, when everything that ticked has stopped, and space stares all around, or grisly frosts, first autumn morns, repeal the beating ground. But most like chaos, stopless, cool, without a chance or spar, or even a report of land to justify despair. Despair, of course, used in 31 of her poems, as we've commented already. Of course, justify immediately makes us think of our study of Milton in Paradise Lost, to justify the ways of God to men. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net over Paradise Lost. It is interesting to think about this poem as a theodicy, that is to say, a question about the value of pain and suffering. And we begin right away with the it. Now, when we get to poem 1092, we're going to play a similar game of this one. I'll just share it with you now, and we'll come back to it then. It was not saint, it was too large, nor snow, it was too small. It only held itself aloof like something spiritual. And notice we're told, whatever it wasn't death, for I stood up. Now the biblical kind of echoes of this poem are remarkable. I'm not going to run them all to ground, but you'll want to study 1 Corinthians 16:13, 2 Corinthians 1:24, and Revelation 6:17. All of them having to do with the idea of standing. And that's why some have read this as a treatment on resurrection. For I stood up, and all the dead lie down. Notice we go from death to night. It was not night, for all the bells put out their tongues for noon. Now, this is an amazing image, right? The bell has that piece of metal that hangs down that hits against it, which for her looks like sticking out their tongues. It's remarkable. Notice we'll continue with from death to night to frost. It wasn't frost. For on my flesh I felt sirocco's, these hot southeast winds of Italy. Some have said of the Sahara. Crawl. It wasn't fire. For just my marble feet could keep a chancel cold. This chancel, of course, the reference to the choir area between the altar and the railing. And yet, after all of that, what was it? Well, it tasted, taking us to Matthew 16:28, when Christ will mention the idea of tasting death. And it tasted like them all. The figures I have seen, set orderly for burial, reminded me of mine. And maybe this is what's going on. Emily losing some of the people close to her. Some have read this as a statement of the war, the Civil War. That is, of course, beginning to bring death to everyone, including those of Amherst. As if my life were shaven. Notice the use of the subjunctive mood here. And notice three of them in a row in anaphoria. And fitted to a frame, and could not breathe without a key, and 'twas like midnight, only earlier we were told that it wasn't night. Notice the paradoxes. When everything that ticked, again back to the ticking of a clock and time, has stopped, and space stares all around. Any of us that have dealt with serious anguish know how powerful that line is. This is what anguish feels like, when space just stares back at us. Or, notice, grisly frosts. We're back to our reading of early on, when we started this lecture of 341. Or grisly frosts. First autumn mourns. And of course, the use of the word mourns when read aloud, which mourn are we talking about? The one of the mourning or the one of sadness, right? And she would say, yes. Repeal the beating ground. And this idea of repealing or removing the beating ground. In other words, it's over. There's some kind of feeling of cessation. But, and here she'll say it, whatever it is, it's most like chaos. Now, chaos will take us to poem 806 when we study that one together. She'll say it this way: a plated life diversified with gold and silver pane to prove the presence of the ore and particles, 'tis when a value struggle it exists, a power will proclaim. Although annihilation pile whole chaoses on him. It's amazing the way she'll use that word chaos. Then she'll say it, stopless. How powerful is that? To deal with the idea of anguish or chaos is stopless. Dash. Cool, dash, without a chance, comma, or spar, taking us back to poem 201. In other words, the shipmaster. In other words, there's nothing to save the one drowning. Or even a report of land. The idea that one is drowning. And as we said about our poem of Stevie Smith, on the classic on this whole treatment, that the idea, not waving but drowning, the idea is that drowning looks a lot like swimming, right up until the moment that the lungs start filling up with fluid. And we've given full lectures at learnstrong.net on the Stevie Smith offering, but it's the same game that Emily is playing with here. Notice the law of life has somehow been repealed, and now the justification is only despair. When we get to 1765, at the end of our study, we'll come back to this study one more time. And this is how she says it. That love is all there is all we know of love. It is enough. The freight should be proportioned to the groove. Okay, what is she arguing here at 2a? Well, one scholar has said, only where hope can exist is despair possible. I think the argument here is that pain or anguish is translinguistic. You can't put it in words, even though she will try, and try brilliantly. At 2b, well, the use of the negatives here is compelling. Did you hear all those hard S sounds, those sibilants? And I think they're wonderful to study, to go back and take a look at them again. The hissing sibilants, as one scholar has called it. Some, stopped, space, stares, grisly, frosts, verse, mourns, most, chaos, stopless, chance, spar, justified, despair. All of those S sounds that Emily, this is brilliant stuff Emily's creating. At 3a, well, I think 1765, we're excited to finally get there to do that study, to see how it kind of complements what we're looking at here. And obviously Stevie Smith's brilliant poem, Not Waving but Drowning. Finally, at 3A, when was a time when you struggled with despair, and to what degree is our study of Emily helping you get through that despair? I hope so. Thank you.